Welcome to a new video that I had the idea for today and got it done. So this is a college basketball top 25 tier list. So the top 25 teams in reverse order. I made a tier list of all of them and explained why. So I've seen this done before for NFL. By the way, in case you're wondering what's in my background, this is supposed to be the Tennessee game, but went to commercial break. So much for that. Anyway, alright, so let's just get this video. Let's just get right into the video. This is Duke Fan Zone, the place where kids talk to. Alright, to start off, well, before I start, let me just clarify this is all in scale. So, the number 25 team in the country right now, Texas Tech, is still like 20 times better than the 365th best team in the country. So, when I say awful, it's comparison to the best people on this list. So in that case, let's just get this underway. So we're gonna go in reverse ranking orders. So that means Texas Tech will go first, and then Iowa State, and then so on and so forth. So let's get this underway. Texas Tech. Now we're not actually gonna put them in bad. We're not gonna put them in awful. We're gonna put them in bad. Ever since they've lost to Butler on November 30th, the Red Raiders have been making their way into the top 25. They just got into number 25 this week. Only lost to number 5 Houston stopped them. They did not start the season great though, so that's not really helping their case. Next up, number 24 is Iowa State. We're putting them also as bad. No awfuls yet. Iowa State has lost to teams Iowa State has lost to teams they should have lost to this year, and beat teams they should have beaten, like the bad teams, like what I was saying earlier, 365, like those teams down there. They should beat them, and they did handily. They're not awful, but they're bad compared to other teams on this list. Next up, we have Florida Atlantic, who will be our first awful. They lost to UNC Charlotte recently, and in general, they have not lived up to their Final Four team last year. Big disappointment. And although they're still a lot better than other teams, compared to the UConns and Purdue's and Dukes, they're awful. Next up, Ole Miss, who is awful too. Ole Miss, on Wednesday they lost to LSU, which will likely drop them out of the top 25 in general, because number 22, losing to an unranked team isn't going to help you very much. Next up, Dayton. I was very surprised to see this. Dayton has won 11 in a row. They haven't beat a single ranked opponent, so that's why they're not up there. But they're average. Winning 11 straight games is definitely going to put you up there. Next up, BYU, who is bad. Not awful. After a 2-game losing streak, BYU is back trying to shake things up a bit. Though they have 2 straight ranked tests. One is today against Texas Tech, and another is Tuesday against number 5 Houston. Next up, TCU. Where will they be? Awful. The Horned Frogs just fell short to unranked Cincinnati. It isn't really playing good basketball compared to others on the list. Creighton. Not awful, but bad. The Blue Jays have, after only losing by 14 to the number 1 team in the country, if you think about it, 14, it's a lot, but not a lot when you think of it compared to the number 1 team in the country. The Blue Jays are one of those teams that are just on the curve between bad and average. I just chose bad. You'll see a bunch of those later on in the video. Marquette. Sorry, Golden Eagles fans. They're not average. They're awful. They just suffered 2 losses to unranked teams in Seton Hall and Butler. The Golden Eagles are just not playing great basketball right now. Next up, Utah State. And they're bad. Not awful. On Tuesday, Utah State lost to unranked New Mexico. They could have been average. They're not average. They barely scared off UNLV by 1 point. They almost had 2 straight losses to get unranked opponents. Next up, Oklahoma. And they're average. Having only have 3 losses, all in which all are ranked, it's surprising that they're this low ranked in general. Oklahoma is just one of those teams that you call good and average. On the curve again. I'm surprised that they're this low in the rankings, though. Illinois started the season off great. They're average. Now, the Fighting Illini haven't really played the easiest schedule. They just lost to unranked Maryland, and they haven't really deserved the good title, as some of these teams will in a bit. Next up, we do have our first good team, though. Auburn. So Auburn, having only 2 losses and a 10-game winning streak, I think they deserve to be in this category. I mean, they're probably on the verge of good and average, but just having 11 straight losses, having 11 straight wins and 2 losses, I mean, it's impressive. 10 straight wins. Arizona next. They also started the season off great. They had a win that we're not going to talk about. They started the season off so well with such quality wins. The Wildcats just haven't really been the same, but now with 4 losses against not very good opponents. Wisconsin, average. Though a loss at Penn State hurts them, it was away. Wisconsin has played pretty consistent, losing to good teams and beating bad teams. That's what an average team does. A true test for the Badgers will come on February 4th when they take on number 2 Purdue. Keep in mind, another game is on February 4th. I'll talk about that in a second. Memphis, we're getting to the top 10 after this one. Well, actually, Memphis is number 10. Memphis, they are bad. They just lost to South Florida on Thursday. The rankings came out on Monday, so they're definitely not going to be number 10 anymore. And although they have only had 2 losses, both of those were against unranked teams. Can't have that. They haven't played a particularly hard schedule either. If you actually look at it, it's been pretty easy. So, I mean, they were unranked. They aren't anymore. Baylor now, also average. Baylor having just lost to Kansas State on Tuesday will definitely drop out of number 9 on the country. Kansas State is unranked. Having only 2 losses, one of which was against Duke, it's only the reason they're still in this category, not lower. Next up, we have Duke, who is good. As much as I want to put Duke as elite, I mean, I'm obviously going to be a bit biased. But I do think if you asked anyone, Duke is playing well. Good. Not amazing, not elite, but good. Having an 8-game winning streak is part of it, but the Blue Devils have a true test February 4th against the North Carolina Tar Heels. What did I say? Tennessee now, also playing good. Not elite. Tennessee has played a real tough schedule, so having 4 losses, 3 of which were against current top 11 teams, they're playing solid basketball. Next up, we have Houston, number 5 team in the country, who is good as well. Houston, after having a 2-game losing streak to ranked opponents, Houston showed up against Texas Tech, beating them by 23 points. If you remember, Texas Tech is the number 25 team in the country, though we ranked them bad. Not awful. Those 2 losses were all Houston had this year, so they've only had 2. North Carolina. As much as I want to put them in awful, I decided I have to be real. They're good. And to be honest, they're on the curb between elite and good. And yes, I'll go with the good side, obviously, because as a huge Duke fan, I'm not ever going to put them as elite unless they're the number 1 team in the country. To get higher, they just need more quality ACC wins, which they unfortunately have been getting. We'll move on from that subject. Kansas is one of the 3 elite teams. Kansas has been playing great, and no, I'm not going to count them off because they had 1 bad loss to UCF. Now you're probably wondering, what's Kentucky doing down here? I was just wondering the same thing. Kentucky is actually average. Forgot to put them there. I just skipped them. Kentucky, to say the least, beat the teams they should beat and lost to the teams they should lose to. That's what average teams do. Now we went down to average, back up to elite. Sorry about that. Purdue is elite. The Boilermakers, like Kansas, had one bad loss, and no, I'm not going to count them off for that either. UConn, the same, elite. They had one bad loss, but I'm not counting them off. All the elite teams had one bad loss, like the past week, but we're not counting them off for that. And trust me, I know what a bad loss feels like. I know. I witnessed Duke 2019. Anyway, this is our official tier list of the top 25. Kansas, Purdue, UConn leading this list off, followed by Auburn, Duke, Tennessee, Houston, North Carolina, and then comes the average, bad, and awful. I'm John. This is a longer video than normal, though I think it was super fun to produce and make. Should I make this a series? I mean, there's going to be different teams each week and different losses. Anyway, that's it. Make sure you like and subscribe. Have a great day.